Hi, PerspectiveWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday, September 24th. A kind of a mild morning here in the Mid-Atlantic region. Plenty of clouds around. We'll stay fairly comfortably warm over the next several days with highs generally in the 70s in the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor. Can be a shower from time to time from tomorrow night, Friday night, into the upcoming weekend as a result of the remains of Tropical Storm Beta. Some of its moisture field is moving to the north and east, but most of it kind of falls apart by the time it reaches the Mid-Atlantic region. It will result in some significant rainfall over the Tennessee Valley, but not so much here in the Mid-Atlantic region. Again, maybe a shower or two Friday night, Saturday night time frame, probably rain-free on Sunday. We have a better chance of showers on Monday, and that threat of showers in the eastern U.S. will continue on Tuesday as well. Probably the biggest story, though, in terms of the eastern U.S. and the central U.S. is an outbreak of cold air for this time of the year that reaches the central U.S. by the middle of next week, and then the latter part of next week into the eastern U.S. It's going to coincide with a strong upper level trough that will form in the eastern part of the nation. At the same time, very strong ridging pops up along the west. That is a problem for the western U.S. It looks like definitely going back to a kind of a relatively hot and dry weather pattern, very conducive to wildfires. So we absolutely are likely to hear more about wildfires from California north as we transition into the first part of the month of October. In terms of tropical activity, we actually have a relatively quiet period for now in the Atlantic Basin. We have the remains of Tropical Storm Beta well inland right in this part of south central U.S. And again, its moisture field will move to the north and east. It will dump a lot of rainfall over the Tennessee Valley in here, but by the time that moisture field reaches the Mid-Atlantic region, there won't be much left, and only expect a shower from time to time Friday night into Saturday night in the Mid-Atlantic region, but more significant rainfall over the Tennessee Valley. But look at this. Nothing going on right now over the Atlantic Ocean, and indeed it looks like we are finally entering a quiet period. I don't believe this is the end of the tropical season by any means. I think we'll have activity ramping up again during the month of October, especially down over places like the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, near the Bahamas. We'll have to watch closely in those areas as we transition into the month of October, the first day of October being next Thursday. Still very warm waters down all along this part of the Atlantic Basin especially. So this is a temporary quiet period for the Atlantic. At the same time, activity in the Pacific Ocean, which has been well below normal this tropical season, is likely to ramp up. So the Atlantic Basin gets quieter, the Pacific Ocean gets more active. Well, let's take a look at the operational run of the GFS from 06Z last night. And again, the big story really in terms of the eastern U.S. and the central U.S. will be the cold air outbreak that comes by the middle part of next week into the latter part of next week. It looks like it'll last right into the next weekend with colder than normal air in much of the eastern half of the nation. At the same time, a strong ridge pops up along the west coast, and they'll be above normal in terms of temperatures and an increased wildfire threat as well. Here we are starting the day. We're looking at 500 millibar height anomalies. A little bit of a trough right now over the south central U.S. That's really associated with the remains of what was Tropical Storm Beta. Again, right down in this region right here, its moisture field will produce some decent rainfall over the Tennessee Valley and then kind of die out by the time it moves into the Mid-Atlantic region. But let's move forward here and watch the transition in the upper part of the atmosphere. First of all, by the weekend, we have ridging starting to return over the middle of the country and into the northeast U.S. Ridging on this particular type of map is shown in the orange, troughing in the blues here. We have this vigorous upper level trough cutting across the northwestern part of the nation with some cold weather, some damp weather, places like Idaho and Washington State into Montana as well. Now watch what happens here. Ridge here by the end of the weekend in the eastern U.S. and we have this deep upper level trough that moved across southwestern Canada into the northern plains by the latter part of the weekend, and then it takes a dive to the south and east and intensifies. And look at this, by the time we get to the early part of next week, this is kind of this cold air outbreak may come in two different stages, with one frontal system, cold frontal system, early in the week, and then perhaps a more significant one by the middle of the week. And we'll kind of see that reflected in the upper air pattern. You see deep upper level trough on Tuesday, and then tends to kind of back off a little bit in terms of location, and then wraps around here. Now here we are by the middle of next week, so two things I want to point out. This very deep upper level trough by the middle of next week across the central and eastern U.S. associated with a colder than normal air mass for the end of September, the beginning of October. And also, look at this ridge popping up right along the western states. They have had somewhat of a relaxation in the wildfire situation out in California and certainly in the Pacific Northwest, where they'll get some decent rain over the next few days. But once this ridge pops up again by the middle part of next week, it'll get hotter, it'll get drier, and unfortunately that wildfire threat will return to the western part of the nation. At the same time, the central and eastern states chill down. Then we keep moving forward through next week. This is now a week from today, next Thursday. And look at this, it tends to kind of reestablish itself by the end of next week, so that by the time we get to Saturday, October 3rd, that's a week from this Saturday, we still have colder than normal conditions in the eastern U.S. with a deep upper level trough, and warmer and drier than normal out across the western states. Now, what does all this mean in terms of temperatures, this change in the upper air pattern, the 500 millibar height anomalies? Well, we'll take a look here, starting off relatively mild here in the mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S., a little bit of cooler than normal conditions, at least at 850 millibars, which is a couple thousand feet above the surface. This cooler than normal weather here, and kind of associated with all those clouds with the remains of Tropical Storm Beta. Let's move forward here and watch what happens here. We have warmer than normal conditions across the middle of the country, especially by the weekend here, and that extends into the east. And then we have colder than normal air mass showing up by the end of the week and going in the first part of next week. And here we have in the central U.S., and again there may be like two cold frontal systems that give us a step down performance in temperatures here in the eastern U.S., one early in the week and one by the middle of next week, and it'll get progressively colder behind these two frontal systems. And here we are, this is now by Tuesday, we have probably that first frontal system ushering cooler air. We already start to get cooler on Tuesday of next week here in the eastern U.S., and certainly Monday and Tuesday will feature a cool down across the central U.S. Notice out west getting warmer than normal as that ridge starts to pop along the west coast. This is now Tuesday of next week. Let's keep moving forward. And here comes the real blast of colder than normal air into the upper part of the Midwest, the northern plains by the middle of next week. This is the forecast map of 850 millibar temperature anomalies by next Wednesday. Out in the west, hotter than normal, drier than normal. Wildfire chance will increase again noticeably in California, maybe even in Washington and Oregon again. And here we go. Then once this colder than normal air gets established in the central and eastern U.S., it lasts for several days. Here we are now into Friday. That's a week from tomorrow, October 2nd. Still much colder than normal across the upper Midwest and all the way into the east, all the way into the southeast, while the western U.S. it gets much warmer than normal here, kind of a split in the nation, and that colder than normal condition will last right into the first full weekend of October, which is a week from this Saturday and Sunday. Next Saturday, October 3rd, Sunday, October 4th, much warmer than normal out west, much colder than normal across the Midwest, the Great Lakes, the Northeast U.S., into the Mid-Atlantic region. So it really begins to cool down in the eastern U.S. around Tuesday of next week, and then becomes even more significant of a cool down later next week into the first full weekend of October. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps from last night's 6Z operational run of the GFS. And here is the moisture associated with the remains of beta. System, the surface center still located way down in the Gulf region in the northeastern part of Alabama, the western part of Mississippi. And look at this. It is dumping some significant rainfall amounts, soaking rain across Tennessee, the Tennessee Valley. But as it progresses to the north and east, and we'll see that here in a moment, this area of moisture tends to fall apart a little bit by the time it gets into the mid-Atlantic region late tomorrow, Friday night time frame. Not quite the oomph that it has over the Tennessee Valley. Nonetheless, can be some shower activity, let's say Friday night and Saturday night in the mid-Atlantic region. Out in the northwest, a vigorous upper level low. That's kind of the first stages of the cool down in the central and eastern U.S., causing some rain and even some snow at higher elevations as they cool down significantly out in places like Montana, Idaho, and Washington State. Let's move forward here. The remnants of beta move off the coast pretty much by Sunday. Looks like Sunday itself, pretty nice day in the mid-Atlantic, the northeast U.S. Mostly sunny, warm, maybe highs near 80 degrees, probably a rain-free day. Chilly air showing up on the maps here across the northwest part of the nation by the end of the weekend. And then we go into the early part of next week, and we have a better chance of showers in the mid-Atlantic region on Monday into Monday night. And that's really associated with one cold frontal system, the first one. And here's the location of the first one across the western mid-Atlantic, the eastern Ohio Valley come Monday evening. That is a cold frontal system that begins the process of cooling down, and it could actually produce some decent rainfall Monday night, Tuesday time frame along the East Coast, something we haven't seen in a while, maybe some showers and even some embedded thunderstorms with that first cold frontal system. Again, we're talking Monday night, Tuesday time frame of next week, some cooler air behind it, and here we go. Then we have kind of a secondary push right here, another cold frontal system by Tuesday night and Wednesday, cutting across the Midwest, and then reaching the eastern states by the middle part of next week. And look at this, we have a 540 thickness line, dash blue line here showing up, maybe for the first time this year in the Midwest here. That is one thickness line that we look for during the winter season for kind of a rain snow indicator. It represents the thickness of the layer, the bottom half of the layer of the atmosphere, the 1,000 millibar, which is the surface, to 500 millibars, which is halfway up. The thicker that layer of atmosphere, the warmer. Generally, and the thinner that layer, the colder it is. So in other words, the lower the thickness, the lower the temperatures. And this is a very chilly air for this time of the year with a 540 thickness showing up by the middle part of next week. And that moves to the east. It modifies a little bit here, but again, we kind of step down in cool temperatures from Tuesday on in the eastern U.S. and all backed up here anchored by a very strong high pressure system over the northern plains. This is now a week from today, next Thursday, and again, a big chill down in the central and eastern U.S. At the same time, it becomes hot and dry again out in the west, leading, unfortunately, to probably a reinvigorated wildfire situation out in the western U.S., while the central and eastern states get way below normal in terms of temperatures. And finally, let's wrap up by, again, repeating, the Atlantic Basin is now entered into a quiet period, albeit temporary. We finally have a stretch of some quiet weather in the Atlantic Basin. It will get more active again during the month of October. At the same time, the Atlantic Basin quiets down. The Pacific Ocean, which has been way below normal in terms of tropical activity, is likely to ramp up over the next week or two. That's it for now. For PerspectiveWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.